Yeah, sure. It's a hard one, but I think I have to go with a bit of what Tam said and Rex. I think big protocol developers or like trying to understand the game theory and all these systems from big protocols. I think that's a nice one. I know lots of people are sort of trying to go um, after understanding how all these mechanics are put in place and how all these protocols are end up working well properly and be successful. And then I think doing an analysis of big protocols and what went wrong with them, it's also nice and very interesting. And I don't think it's done enough. Like for in the case of Terra, like I don't think there's many post-mortems that look at Terra as a system and all the incentives and all of that. Like all people know that went wrong, but I don't think anyone has fully grasped and put into text or a video or something what happened there from that point of view. And back to you, I guess.
Okay, thanks. Um, yeah, okay. Well, we're going to talk about some of this today. I would say I'm going to throw a little monkey wrench. You know what would be interesting to me is to hear like folks from the IEEE or engineering associations from the past, people who've been through this curve of like launching a new field of engineering, like what that was like, you know, and how did they get like mainstream awareness for this field? Because like, you know, like software development, you know, was like it was just a bunch of hackers, like people just doing shit on the side, right? And like how did that turn into like a disciplined field? Like what was that process? What did that look like? Also like, you know, I mean some of these people are probably passed on at this point, you know, like if you look at like chemical engineering and some of these other ones, but I don't know, that would just be really cool. I know times have changed, but like I'll bet there's things we could learn. Um, okay, so building on this question, so uh, we talked last week. We had a bunch. There's kind of a bunch of like loose ends last week about what we want to do with. Uh, oh, I think I lost something that I had in my notes here. We were talking about how we want to handle community calls going forward, and there's still some kind of like I think some differences of opinions maybe, but I think there's like what I'm sensing is um, that there's kind of like two purposes that we're trying to achieve, and we've been trying to achieve them um, maybe in the same meeting, but maybe it's time to separate these things. So there's kind of one that's like more nostalgic and kind of like just like relationship building, like you know, feeling good about our community, feeling good about the relationships in the community, connective. And then there's one that's more like community building, which is more like trying to bring new people in and trying to get them excited about what we're doing and the field itself. And so I was thinking that maybe what we could do is deliberately start to separate these things by like the way we describe them, how we run them. And so along those lines, Tam was nice enough to volunteer, even though she's super busy right now. She was like, I just can't resist when you ask me to do something. I feel like I need to do it. So she kindly offered yesterday to help us drive a get together for next week for the number 100 community call. And so it's not gonna be anything like super fancy, but the idea is to make this kind of more homey and celebratory and reach out to you know, basically go to the alumni. There's like the TC alumni stewards and see how many folks we can get on the call for next Thursday, and just have like a nice reflective like. Well, I'll let Tam explain it. She's putting together some thoughts, but more like celebratory and giving thanks and just reflection on like what an amazing year this has been. Tam, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I guess, I've just started a document. I'll share it at the end, sort of the middle of this call, end of this call. I guess the point is, if we do this, it'll be a special end of year review and 100th community call, maybe the last community call. I don't know what we're going to do with those in the future, but it's just a nice marker to, like, even if we end the community call in 100 community calls, I think that's pretty cool too. But I guess the goals would be just like to invite as many people who participated. It's not just the alumni stewards, it's all active contributors who maybe haven't been around for a while. Just to anyone who's been like pretty active and made an important contribution this year, to have us all invited, and then to ask some questions that might be a little funny, like, if you could go back and change anything, what would you change? Or, what is the funniest moment that you want to share? I just feel like it's just a moment for like a just a feel good. I don't think we should have any objective other than to have a really nicely spent hour together. That was my thought. I don't know if people think that's good enough for us to do this. Cool. I see one thumbs up.
People vibing with that? Questions? I have a suggestion, just so it's super hard when I totally get it when people don't have their cameras on. This is Web3, so I totally get it. But like, it's hard sometimes to ask a question into space and have no response. It kind of feels like, whoa. So maybe if folks can, like, if you're like feeling it, it's like, yeah, just give some type of emoji response, like, so that we can like go like, yeah, okay. Or if there's no emoji responses, then maybe it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe we need to slow down and like get some more thoughts on it. So that would be helpful.
Or maybe it's like, maybe a better question is like, does anyone think we should not do this? I think that's, pretty important. And then I think, because you said that and I thought you were talking about the Twitter space, I also think it's like, it would be specific questions for specific people who've, yeah, on the Twitter space itself, just to be clear.
Great. Well, Tam, thank you for taking the lead on that. I really appreciate that. And one other thing too that I was thinking about is that we're going to be coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the launch of the bonding curve of the ABC, and like that I think is cause for celebration. Like that gives us enough time to actually plan something fun and big. Like the 1-year anniversary of the launch of the official launch of the TEC, the economy, and that would be really cool. So I think that would be like, if we start to think about these kinds of gatherings as being very distinctly oriented towards two sets of goals. One is more like recognizing ourselves and all the great stuff that's been happening here, and it's more like a internally focused things, and just be very explicit, like that's what we're shooting for, and like that's the goal of it. And other people can, of course, anybody can come to these things, like, because they're great attractors. The culture is a great attractor. But just to be very explicit, it's like, yeah, that's what the purpose of this one is. And then all these other things that we're starting to experiment with, then we can free them up to really be good at, not having to carry both loads of like, here's, like looking inward at like how we take care of ourselves and stuff like that. Of course, we're going to be, reflecting the spirit of this place through those calls. But the focus can then be more on like getting these speakers to come in and talk about their experiences and get people from the outside to become more interested in what's going on in the TEC. So let me stop there for just a second, just get the vibe on that general idea of kind of trying to separate the purpose of these two types of meetings. Does that vibe with people?
Can you like very quickly just say it again? Because I was distracted. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Basic idea is be explicit about the purpose of our meetings when we set them up. Some meetings would be focused on celebration and building the kind of the culture of the TEC, and they're really aimed at like taking care of the people who are contributing. And And then some would be more outward facing and really aimed at attracting new people into the TEC by focusing less on the work that we're doing internally, the coordination efforts inside, and more on the topics of token engineering and like getting people, educating people about this field, helping them understand the purpose of the TEC, more outward facing. But stop trying to do both in the same meetings. Any comments? Any hesitations? I've seen a couple of hearts and some nods, some thumbs up, some bouncing TECs. Okay, seems like there's pretty good consensus here. Any bouncing rabbits? Okay, now we're just there's a free for all. Pandas. Any concerns about this?
Let's do it.
Okay. Acid, aren't you going to just pause and now say, no, let's DAO it? That's kind of your trademark.
Let's DAO it.
Okay. All right. So let's DAO it. That'll be the direction. And there's already starting to be some energy around trying to find some speakers. We've gotten a few ideas today. Rex, I know, is like thinking about stuff. NT is the big fan of doing these kinds of events and stuff like that. So we'll probably talk about this in the follow-up call after this, if people are interested in sticking around, just to see if maybe this is an area that we can develop a little bit to get going, and then maybe come back with some ideas either next week or the following week. So, okay, so now we go to the next topic, and that's going to be the Token Engineering Academy. And Juanca, I see that you added the ETH Colombia piece. How much time would you like to talk about that at the end?
No, I would only take 2 minutes. And I'm going to say two things. One is that, after DevCon, the Ethereum Colombia community received support on the CLR funds round, and we got over 40K. But I see this as a really good news, but at the same time, I see this as a challenge because still we are in a very low infrastructure to organize as a DAO, and I don't want those funds to be used without having advice on how to manage them better. So I was thinking to somehow connect this community with this other community, or to have some advice process, because we would also like to somehow create or manage our those funds as a common pool in a gardens, and we need some advice on this. So I didn't know exactly where to bring this, but I am bringing it here. That's one thing. And the other one, and it just came from this call, is that in the Gravity website, we want to say the names of the communities we've worked with. And I just wanted to say that we want to put the TC there, and to say that it's a community where Gravity not only was built, but from which we've built our experience. So I just wanted to know if there's any drawbacks to that.
Nothing about having the TC on the website. I think that's really great. But about the Colombia thing, let's have them join here. Maybe we can have like some sort of interest group around that, chat about it, have a few meetings, invite people with more expertise or whatever, just jam on what things can work for the community and stuff, and let's do it.
Hey, one thing. Sorry. Well, I was just going to say, one thing that would be kind of interesting test, Juanca, is, maybe what we can do is just treat these interest groups, like a lot of them will be more long-lasting kinds of things, but like maybe this is one where it's like intentionally, it's like, yeah, this is only going to last for a little bit. Like, it's like an interest group that just, it forms, it does its, like people jam on something and then it intentionally just goes away. Like at the end, once the objective is met, it just disappears. Or maybe it doesn't. Like if there's something, like it can morph, but like we're trying to keep these interest groups to be pretty low overhead so that people can just like have like something that they want to work on and not have like some staff or some, like paid people there to kind of like have to like steward it. It's just like, yeah, people want to, like, this was a perfect example. There was like 5 people that just said like, yeah, or four or 5 people who just said, yeah, I'm kind of interested. So anyway, that's just an idea. Okay, and then who said this? The thing about the voting system interest group, was that Nate? Was that you?
It was me.
Not me.
It was me. Like I just thought, I just thought the voting systems, because that's one that Nate is already thinking of. But whatever group it is, I think it's fine to just have them joining here. And I think it is also the perfect opportunity to bring even people from the academy that are freshly new from the course that can bring new ideas and stuff. Like I think this can be both a nice opportunity for East Colombia, but also for us and for a lot of people.
Cool. Okay, Juanca, does that take care of what you're? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so let's get into the thing that I'm really excited to talk about, which is Token Engineering Academy. And we were going to talk. So we kind of ran out of time on Tuesday to talk about this, and there was like a lot of people interested in hearing more. And Griff volunteered to kind of share some of his thoughts. And one of the things that I just want to, before we get going on this, just to make really clear, we've said this before about like, it's important that we treat this proposal that's up in conviction voting as it's a grant, right? Like this is no strings attached. This is like a nonprofit grant. I mean, it's not a nonprofit, but like this is a contribution. That's important for tax reasons, and also just like I think as Tam said last week or on Tuesday, man, if there's a place where we can be putting some public goods funding for the token engineering field, like this is the place. So having said that, Griff, do you want to just like share your thoughts about like what you've been experiencing, just some of the kind of ideas of like how this partnership could evolve over time? Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty obvious that there's a lot of overlap in TEC and TEAcademy. TEC even started in the TEAcademy Discord, right? And if we only changed Discord because we're like, well, maybe we don't want to make a mess of the Academy Discord if the token launch becomes a lot of chaos. Luckily, it wasn't a lot of chaos, so that was all easy. And now there's conversations about like how do we, come back together stronger. There's even a desire to even maybe merge brands and make it the TEC Academy one day. These things are all up in the air, but it's very much possible. Angela doesn't want to necessarily be the legally responsible person for the academy, or also be stuck always doing the academy forever, right? She might have other things that she wants to do. So so there's a lot of opportunity in us connecting with the TEAcademy and starting to build a bridge so that we can maybe even eventually merge. That's the vision or the path, but the path is going to be, who knows? We'll probably start I don't think we're going to make any direct efforts to merge or anything right away. It's more about just like feeling it out. We give them a nice sponsorship, and maybe they can bring in some token utility for TEC, start integrating the token into their platform. Various ways, token gated discords, or I don't know, we could brainstorm even in this call a million different ways of how we can add token utility. But yeah, I guess there was in the past there's been things where it's like, oh, we should do this, and then it's like TEAcademy's like, but we want to do that, It's like, oh no, well, we want to help you do that. Maybe like that's it. Like if you want to do it, you're the best, right? So now we can we will never be. Hopefully, with this partnership, we'll never be blocked by the Academy. We'll always be helped by the Academy, and that would be really nice. But honestly, I don't know what people want to know. I don't know much. Honestly, like it's like predicting the future about these things. But I'd love to maybe just do like Q&A or something if there's any questions that can direct my rants. Anyone have any like? What do you want to know?
I have a question. Where's the donations go? It's gonna be on Gardens or in other platform?
The donation for TE
Uh-huh.
Academy is on Gardens, and actually the proposal's already up.
Oh, okay.
So I guess a long-term question in terms of integrating the TEC token, which I fully support, into TEAcademy's flows. I think it'll be a really awesome utility for our token. But one question I have is regarding the governance of those tokens. So if the TEAcademy decides that they're going to get paid in TEC, and over time that they've accumulated a lot, and they have a good governance stake, which is a good thing. It's just about how that would be managed in the future. If that is something that maybe Angela has thought about yet, or if it's still up in the air, or the governance on their side of things.
Yeah, I don't think that they're looking to be necessarily a whale. I think what they're looking, I think that they would be like more interested in not necessarily even being their own entity, right? Like they would want the TEC. My opinion or my view of this is that they're hoping that they can get their salaries covered and that they can give us the TEC utility benefits. So like let's say that there's some special course that you have to pay TEC to attend. I don't think that they're like, hey, please give us that TEC, we earned it. They're going to be more like, oh yeah, that TEC goes to the reward board and it's issued for praise or something like that. I think that's going to be more of the direction that they're looking to go. Their hope is just that the TEAcademy can pay people to do what they need to do, and that the TEC can cover that, and then whatever. If I think they would prefer that model than like, okay, we're going to try to make a lot of money off of the TEAcademy, and we'll end up holding a lot of TEC. I don't think that that's really their idea.
Can I add one thing onto that? Just since we're thinking about when we're talking about governance, one thing that I just can't get out of my head nowadays is this idea. Actually, NT was the one who first brought this to me, to my attention. Was like the TECs are common pool. Like there's a huge potential to have like some big funders like Ethereum Foundation or others use us as a regrantor. And so that regrantor model is something that's like really well established in the nonprofit world. You have like giant foundations that want to like invest in a particular issue area, and so they find a group, a regranting organization that's really good at understanding the needs of a particular sector or problem, and then they just regrant the funds of that that bigger foundation. So why am I bringing this up right now? Well, I think that the TEC could definitely play that role. Like, in fact, actually, you could imagine Ethereum Foundation dumping a few $1 million into the TEC and saying, like, figure out how to build the field of token engineering. But to do that, I think, getting our conviction voting so that it's really a lot more driven by people who have token engineering expertise would be super valuable. Like that becomes a lot more attractive to a big funding organization. And so that's where I think the Token Engineering Academy could be really interesting. Like if there's all of these new folks who are learning token engineering every year, and they're also getting TEC, like in the form of praise or some other mechanism, and those people now are voting on the things that are coming before our conviction voting. Like that becomes a really interesting mechanism for like directing funds, because you've got like the wisdom of the crowd, like a really growing group of people with expertise. So anyway, that's I just want to throw out, just since you brought up the governance thing, Nate.
I have a few thoughts as well. I guess first of all, I think that that's awesome. Like I've always seen the academy sort of as the biggest place so far to like pretty much the biggest tea community so far, where you have people with various levels of expertise continuously coming together, learning stuff, sharing stuff, and I've always thought of ways that we can work together better and stuff. One thing, like one long-term concern of mine, is that I don't necessarily believe that we should, like I don't know, it's probably it's I don't want to get too ahead of myself, of ourselves, but my how I see things was always to for the TC to contribute to build, but not own anything. And so, if the academy becomes part of the TC, then we start to be this giant organization that's quite complex and all of that, and that owns everything on T to say something. Um, so for instance, my idea for the interest groups would be to incubate people, to incubate groups that hopefully one day become their own guild and that can take clients or whatever. um, but I also understand Angela's concerns. I think that's something we'll have to figure out with time. I guess I would love to talk about more short-term things that we could do to collaborate, just to sort of get started. And one of them is I put in the agenda is with the introduction to token engineering call. We used to participate and have a say and explain about the commons and all of that and working groups, etc. And I think now with the transformation and a lot of things, it's also a nice opportunity to figure out how can we how can we support the introduction, how can we start being involved again. Maybe they talk about the study groups and the fundamentals, and we talk about the interest groups. Say, for example, the If Colombia thing is something we could promote and try to get people into interested, thanks to one introduction to token engineering. And also other types of support, like POAPs are a big thing. Like, for instance, for DevCon, I got a discount because I had a few POAPs from multiple communities, and the academy doesn't do POAPs. I don't know if that's because of capacity or whatever, but maybe we can help them make POAPs for the introduction to token engineering, and a few things like that are like very low hanging fruits, but they can start to build the relationship back again.
Yeah, maybe I can respond to the part where you're saying like we don't want the TEC to be a big, large organization. I agree completely. I feel like if the academy comes in and they maybe their brand's strong enough to stand on its own, maybe it's like we just add powered by TEC or something like that, or maybe we don't even have to because the token integration makes it clear that it's like TEC and TEAcademy are connected. I think it's mostly like, but I completely agree that we shouldn't let the TEC become like an organization, like a big organization that's like overseeing the academy, but more like the academy is just running its own with the same people doing the same things, but there's now, instead of a centralized LLC or GmbH, it's the German version of an LLC, that is like, responsible for issuing things, paying German taxes, and managing all the legalities of paying contributors and those things. We kind of move that more into a DAO model and let that fall away and transition into a different system. And I think it's more about the TEAcademy's current like behind like the current legal structuring disappearing, that would make for the merger technicalities, but we don't necessarily need to go too hardcore on like a social HR merger. It's just like, yeah, there'll probably be easier flow of people back and forth, but not necessarily like, okay, now we own this. It's not like a merger and acquisition from a corporation.
So would it be accurate to say that the TEA, its goals, like foundational goals right now, are to create a sustainable funding model for the operations for growth, and then to remove liability from any type of for like paid courses and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think remove. I think that's a pretty good estimate. I would say not even just remove liability for paid courses, but like, remove liability from Angela. Like Angela is not looking to be the fall person for the academy. And I think everything is set up for her to do that, and she's really worried about it. So how do we? That's like one of the things she's asking the TEC to do, is to take that on in some sense. And that's going to be a big research project for us. It's not like we know exactly how to do that. Maybe we have to spin up another legal entity in a different jurisdiction that they sell the academy to for $1. Who knows? Like there's a million ways to deal with this. And that's not really the priority anyway. That's like, the due date for that is a year from now-ish. We're looking to like, her goal is that by 2024, that like she can close Connectopia, which is the legal entity behind the TEAcademy. So that's like a long-term goal, but it's not the first priority, and there's a lot of other things that we need to do to just like prove out the concept that the academy and the TEC work well together.
And I was going to ask one last question. Is there anything that concrete steps that we can take right now that would help in those efforts with getting closer?
Passing these proposals that will come up, and there's also like brainstorming, token gating, and probably just hanging out in the TEA community and inviting people there. I think these are like the first steps that we can do. I am hoping to have sort of like a weekly call with Angela to start bringing in the movement toward token utility. And so we can also brainstorm in this call if you guys want. I've been making a Miro board for it. Let me see if I can share it here. Oh yeah, that's right. You have to share it with like these other links. But just like brainstorming ideas of how how we could connect the token utility to the TEC with TEAcademy.
Yeah, so I guess just a couple comments. I'll throw support behind, taking a step back. I think supporting the academy, and multiple people have said this, really aligns with the TEC's, mission and vision, right? I think, in the spirit of keeping it separate, right, providing a grant for them to do this work makes sense from my perspective. So I went and voted. I'm in support of it. I think that makes sense. As far as integrating them, and I agree with not wanting the organization to get too big. On the same token, the organization can be small, but the community has to be big to make an impact. And so, hesitating to bring in a large community because we don't want to get the organization to be too big, I think is there's considerations when we do that, and the governance aspect, and I like that we're thinking about that. But I think the community has to be big, otherwise the impact is low. And so I like the idea of bringing in, arguably, the academy has done a wonderful job And I like the idea of integrating them more holistically, more, effectively into the commons, where it doesn't have to be a legal, whatever, and maybe it will at some point, right? But I think making the connection more explicit strengthens both of us, right? Strengthens the academy in that they have the resources from the TEC and potentially some token utility, and I think that's great for us as well. And also from our perspective, a lot of organizations, engineering organizations, they have a certification arm, so to speak, right? And they have an education arm, so to speak. And the academy can help train, and maybe it's the TEC that provides some of the certifications or whatever. Or the TEC token is the piece that is certifying things, right? And so joining forces to add legitimacy to build that organization such that someone can say yes when we want to hire a token engineer, just like when we want to hire an electrical engineer, they have their professional engineering, right? Their PE or a civil engineer, whatever it is, right? We could, build that with the academy to do that for token engineering. When we want to hire a token engineer, they have to have a certification, and that process adds utility to the token.
Hell yeah. By the way, Gideon, it's way up. So this is the old TEC vision board that we did like 2 years ago. But I just decided to use this to start the TEC utility. I'm sorry to derail you, Max, but he's sharing the screen. So if you go up, there's like a small box up and to the left. Way up. Yeah, you probably want to zoom out. In fact, you can click now zoom in. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So this is where yeah, sorry about that. Make this bigger.
I was looking at the other one. I was like, man, you really were busy because the other one was super filled out. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna move it closer. I just moved it a little bit, but so it's not so hard to find. But I agree with you, Max, that it's like having a certificate program and being able to align like this kind of we're like the IEEE of sorts connected, that, and the TEAcademy is kind of like the first certificate entity that's giving certificates, and we have the opportunity to be a certification agency of sorts to say this is a good course. Oh, hey, MIT, you want a token engineering course? Who's going to validate it? Okay, we'll look at it, That would be pretty cool. At least we'll coordinate its validation.
Well, and the idea of it being a third-party organization is that, it adds trust to the process, because we're not part of we don't have our own protocol. We don't have our own blockchain. We don't have our own, it adds legitimacy because we don't necessarily have a stake in whatever we're trying to push, right? I think, that's what those organizations provide. They provide that structure, that ethics, that around it, that isn't, hey, consolidate on our solution, right? It's more generic, and so it can be somewhat separated from, the capitalistic nature of some of the other programs that might arise around a specific blockchain or a specific economic model or whatever the case is.
I only found out today that there's like 30 different blockchain societies in like every damn university now, and I was quite surprised. I don't know if there's something that TA can do in like approaching those and trying to get those involved. It's quite interesting. But anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. I'm all in favor of this. However, the process is, and it makes sense that there be a separation of concerns. I mean, if the idea of the TEC is to be kind of the financial backbone of the, or if the idea is to kind of allow the TA to concentrate on their mission and then us be the ones that actually have to go through and look at grants and look at it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, just the money around that would make sense if that was
But
what they're trying
like
to
to
do.
Max's point, what do we get out of the deal? You know, we're funding TA and T, and we're putting in a hefty amount of sum and keeping them open. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for something out of the deal, whether it's a stake or some sort of influence.
Influence in the TEA.
Yeah. I mean, what we just hand them all this money and like funded fundamentals and putting all this money, and it's great for the TA, but like to get no stake, in their community, their organization seems like a losing decision for the TEC.
I mean, stake, I don't know. I mean, I'll be kind of an asshole and say that part of the reason why the TA was able to succeed so quickly was because it's more of a centralized structure. So the TC moves very slow, and had the TC been more heavily involved in the TA, it wouldn't be where it is now. At least that's my opinion on it. Yeah, to that one.
I think the long-term utility, like the long-term integration of the TEC utility into the TEA is worth it, in my opinion. I mean, I think that if they can commit to integrating the TEC token, which by all intentions they have, I think if that is successful, then it has been worth every dollar we spend, and I think it'd be probably worth more than what we are continually giving them. If we see consistent use of that TEC token being purchased for programs and access, but that's contingent.
It's worth mentioning, Mitch, that they want it to be a donation because we don't want to pay VAT. Like we'd have to pay 20% if there was like a quid pro quo to the German government, if it's not a donation. So we left this concept of token utility out of the blog post, out of the forum post, and it's going to be like we give them money, they give us some token utility, but there's no expectations of that, and it has to make sense for them. But like, there's an intention. There is like an intention there.
I mean, maybe it just feels like like including us more or working more with them, because it's like we've always been trying to pull them in. We're always talking about it, and so it's like, how can we leverage this situation to actually make that happen? It's like, well, if you keep on wanting us to fund you, it's like we really want this from you, and it's not a financial ask. It's not anything specifically about tokens, but it's like we're trying to build the token engineering community, and like if you would like to continue receiving funds, then like we would like to integrate more or have more crossover.
And what do you mean besides token utility? Like, what are you envisioning as an example of this kind of integration?
Well, the biggest problem, which is very obvious for all of you, is we don't have any token engineers. We don't have any hard skills, apart from the few people that have joined recently in the token engineering commons. So, I mean, how could we do cross-pollination and actually talk about token engineering in the token engineering commons? Or at least have a better discussion with professionals. I mean, that's kind of the gross hypocrisy, right? It's like, wow, what are we doing?
And more specifically in the Discord, or like would Twitter Spaces be enough?
Somewhere, Griff.
Cool.
Hey, Mitch, I'm not sure what part of the conversation you came in on, but when we
Very
were
late.
starting, what's that?
Very late.
Yeah. So I think
Thursday.
you may have missed the very beginning of this where Griff was talking about this as like, actually, this is like a deepening of the relationship that could end up in a merger. So, so what you're talking about is actually, I mean, the question is then like, okay, well, what would that actually look like? You know, like these two entities were really one, or like some kind of configuration. Like, well, okay, then what would that actually mean in terms of the way decisions are made and all that kind of stuff? But I think that's the piece that you may have been missing, is that that's the context of this. Is like some deeper merger.
That's great. I would like to make those asks like more overt or plain instead of implied. Yeah.
I think something that we kind of miss as well is the opportunity, because the academy, like I think we try too hard to have our own community, where for me I think the T community is just a T community, whether that's on our Discord or not. The biggest the the biggest thing on the academy, like they have a really big community. That's something that comes natural with education. You have a lot of people, um but they have limited capacity, and so they are focused on the course. They're focused on giving like support for hosts, support for some complementary education, like a few workshops and whatever. And I think there's an opportunity for us, even if we like hard skills, to come up with parallel activities that can bring more attention and even money to every one of us. So, for instance, like on more specific example, we've been chatting a bit about a few ideas to do in the future, and one of them is like doing again the token engineering global gatherings, probably virtual or something. And with all the graduates and all the community from the academy, I'm pretty sure that we can find sponsors to cover the costs, and maybe even have some money left for us. And same with a thousand other things that we can do. Um, Another thing that I'm always talking about that, because I'm really interested in that, is like granting. Like Gitcoin and multiple organizations do rounds where they don't necessarily put the money. And now that we can say, hey, the academy, which we supported with a lot of funds and other things, has X amount of people graduated, have this and that, we have these metrics, whatever. Come join us. Let's do a round. Let's have some in projects, like propose some stuff, and let's give them some grants. Like, I don't know. Like, I think the opportunity is there. We just have to look at it and make use of it. Big protocols and big projects have multiple necessities. Say Uniswap, with they're always with a back and forth with the fee switch. Um, Now Ethereum, with the layer twos and all the updates, they're doing a lot of grants rounds focused on data and focused on protocol development and research and all of that. And we are just not looking at that. And I think that's something we don't require more expertise than we already have, and we can leverage the things we have supported in the past.
Well,
Hey,
we're basically out of time. I just want to say one last thing, and that is, please go into the Miro board if there's any ideas that you have about what the TEAcademy could do for. Don't ask what we can do for the TEAcademy. What can the TEAcademy do for us? Throw it in there, and then I can bring it up to Angela in our weeklies, and we can start to prioritize some of these things and see which ones are low effort, high impact, and execute on them.
awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Griff, for doing that. Also, Tam has a document that she put up there for next week's community call.